Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights. And today's episode, we have William Kenower. I call him Bill. And Bill, welcome to our show.
Hey, it's good to be here. You know, there is a famous quote about writing in headlights. Are you familiar with it?
No.
Oh, yeah. It's attributed to E.L. Doctorow. And he said that, I'm going to paraphrase, that writing a novel is like driving from Boston to Philadelphia at night, and you can only see what's in the headlights. But if you follow that, it'll get you where you need to go. That you don't get to see the whole road, but just the road that's in front of you. Just follow that, and then away you go. So whether you knew it or not, when you titled this podcast, you were referencing a well-known quote in the writing.
Some things we get right for accidental reasons, but as long as it works, I'm for it. That's good. Also, for those out there, that's exactly what his work is like. Bill is both a writer and a speaker, and you can see why. We're going to get to talk to him, let him hear what he has to say for us. Now, as an author, I know way back when you did some fiction writing, but since then you've gone to nonfiction.
Yeah.
And how does that work? I mean, that's a big difference, isn't it? I mean, huge.
Well, yeah. Well, yes and no. I started writing fiction and poetry and screenplays and sketch comedy. So basically stuff that wasn't, my life. But everything you learn writing, say, a novel, is very applicable to the kind of memoir-ish stuff I do. Because you're still using scenes, you still have dialogue, even though you're not creating it from nothing, but sort of recreating it. You're still rendering the world, you're still describing things. And ideally, so when you write, Everyone Has What It Takes, which is my last book, that's a book about writing, but there's a lot of just stories I tell. There are chapters that really are kind of part memoir. And when you're in that mode, a memoir, pure memoir, reads a lot like fiction in a lot of ways. Like sometimes you might not know which it is. And so it's very applicable, the basic tools. And there is a psychological difference when the character in the book has got your name and has done your stuff. And it does require viewing the events of your life differently than probably how you viewed them just going about your day. You have to look upon your own experiences as clay that can be molded into a work of art, which is not how we usually view our life. It's our life and this thing that happened. And I find it deeply therapeutic to see my life that way, but that does take a shift. Whereas when you're writing fiction, you don't have to do that. You say, well, I'm just making it up.
My memoirs would be like fiction anyway. I mean, the things I have done in my life, even my wife says, are you sure you're telling that right? You got to make sure it's honest and real. But in reality, if I thought about it and I figured out a way to do it and I went and did it, I mean, I did crazy things correctly or attempted to do it correctly. How many people want to go out and be a big game guide, or climb mountains or, kayak to the ends of the river to the ocean? If I wanted to do it, I figured out a way to do it.
So you were an adventurer. You were
absolutely.
a physical adventurer. You were a Hemingway-esque out there.
Yes. And I have read some of that early in my years. And, I'm at that era. So yes, those kind of things, being, if you can think it, you can do it. One of those. So on both sides of that, I can see that. And I like the little short story versions of your chapters that you have in your book, because it's this little segmented item, it kind of grabs you. That's good. And my life is full of little chapters.
Everyone's life is divided up like that. But you know what? Even those people who say, I'm going to be a teacher. My sister's a teacher. Yeah. She wanted to be a teacher from the time she was like 11. And that it has been a straight line. But there's been a lot of stuff in her life along the way that was not a straight line, that was not planned, she's had to figure out, that part, yes. And I will say, I've been married to the same woman since I was 27. We've been together since I was 25. And I really knew the moment I set eyes on her when I was 17 that she was it. So in a way, that was like a straight line, where for a lot of people, relationships are anything but, right?
Very
the romantic
true.
parts of it. So everybody's got something.
Everybody has something. Yep. Now you've got fearless writing, which is awesome. everyone has what it takes, and right
within
within
yourself.
yourself. Yes, right within yourself. I've actually I think it was Fearless Writing, you talk about the magic. When I was reading that, it was like, oh my gosh, that's what I've got. I mean,
Yeah.
when I get writing, um, when I was doing Stone, The Adventures of Ronan Stone, it was like I'd sit down and I'd start writing, and it would just go, you know,
Yeah.
4 or 5 hours, 6 hours later, you'd kind of, oh gosh, what time is it? Because
Right.
it just goes, and
Yep.
you have no idea necessarily where it's going. I
No.
didn't. I'm definitely a pantser. I mean, I sit
Yeah.
down and it just happens.
Yep.
But at the other end of that, I can't even believe I wrote it. I go back through and I go, man, that's a cool story.
Yeah.
I didn't start out to write that story. I just
Yep.
sat down and started writing, and it happened. And I
Yeah.
really connected with the magic that you were talking about in there.
I was quoting GM Ford.
Mhm.
He's passed now, but he's I liked the reason I chose him to quote on that, because look at everybody talks about the magic. Like this is the secret of the. I mean, they might not call it that,
The
but on some
secret.
level,
That's right.
yeah, the secret. But everybody, any writer who spent, if you've done this for any length of time, and particularly the writers I talk to who are, this is what they do. You know about it, you rely on it, you have different language for it, but you know that it exists. And I like the quote from him because he was not a pantser. He's an outliner, in general. And so I thought it was good to choose from him because he, for all the outlining he's done, he said, you got to leave room for the magic. So even he and his lay it out, he was a suspense writer, which tend to be very plotted, books, not always, but often. And he knew you have to leave room. And the magic is the thing that you didn't anticipate. And I have learned that even when I'm telling a story about something that I did, so I know what's happened, right? I know the things that happen. So that's not going to get invented. But I have to discover why I'm writing it. That is, I go in and say, okay, I know the events, but simply relaying the events is not going to tell the story. And so there's this layer of discovery all the way through. And it's the moment, the sentence that comes to me, I'd always say to myself, well, that's interesting, Bill. Now, why don't you go write it and see what it's actually about? Like, wait till you get, because like I said, one sentence can change the whole thing. And I'm always, when I'm writing, I'm waiting for that little jolt of magic, which is inspiration, which is the thing that came to me that I did not anticipate, that simply was the answer to the question, usually, well, what should come next? Or how would I describe that? And sometimes just in trying to describe something, I see something brand new. But it's your imagination is not like a soda machine where you can put a quarter in and push a button and say, give me inspiration. You have to just get relaxed, get receptive. And Andre Dubuque said it beautifully, but he was quoting a poet. The way he described receptive mode is open to any answer that comes. In other words, you sit there and say, what should happen next? How would I describe that? And having no preconceived notion about what the answer is. And if you're in that frame of mind, now you're in the receptive mode. And that's how the magic happened. You being totally open to whatever feels right, whatever comes to you, as opposed to what you want to have happen.
It's really true. As you write, it just flows, and you never know where it's going to go. But in there is that kernel. Now, I found that writing that way can be dangerous in that you can write 10, 15,000 words and go, you know what? The story's gone somewhere else. So,
yeah.
But that's where the action, that's where that magic has taken you. So I go back and I'll take out a whole chapter or two, or, because it's gone this way. It was going over there. That's where I kind of thought it was going. And now it's going somewhere else. So it has its pitfalls there, but that magic is what carries the story. And you do a lot of extra work, but when it comes down to the final product, I think it's that spark that grabs people and say, gosh, that's good.
What it reminds me of is if you're someone who doesn't like to plan out your work, it does require a certain kind of discipline, which is recognizing an idea that feels a part of the story and an idea that is not a part of it. Because you can have very interesting ideas occur to you that are not a part of the story, that don't feel like, that aren't a natural extension of what the story wants to be, but it can be very interesting nonetheless. In memoir, I talk to my students about how, look, conceivably anything in your life is interesting and worth telling, but you can't tell it all. And so if you're going to start in, 2012 and go to 2015, you can't write everything that happens along the way. And so you need to weed stuff out, and you can't follow every little thought you have. So the same is true even of writing fiction. Ideas will come, and as you get more experienced, you start recognizing an idea that feels like an extension and one that feels new and not a part of it, and not worth, and what will amount to a blind alley in the end.
Again, you've done both, so you have that experience where a lot of people haven't crossed back and forth. There's a beauty in each, and they both can almost tell the same story, because
absolutely,
actually my stories are a whole lot about what I've done and the way I've gone about it. You just put it in a storyline, and vice versa. You can use those same kind of concept in your nonfiction that still is that same story, just more personal voice to it. But what are the pitfalls of each? Do you have any?
The only pit you can fall into is trying to make yourself tell a story you don't want to tell. And for some people, that's not an issue. It sounds like, for me, listening to you describe your work, it doesn't sound like much of an issue. But for me, I kind of said to my imagination, write me a novel.
And you felt confident about it at that point, what you were writing?
I felt immensely, well, I assumed I knew exactly how to do it. I felt no one else in the world knew how to do it but me. Of course, that's not true. Or I should say, I had no interest in what other people thought the essay should be. Zero. I alone knew what mine were supposed to be, which was not the case when I was writing fiction. I was very much, in a way, trying to imitate the novelists I loved the most.
I was going to say, to the market, kind of what you were doing there.
Or to market or whatever. But with the nonfiction, I felt I had a vision for what they were supposed to be. And so on that level, it was confidence, although I didn't call it confidence. I was just listening and trying to satisfy my own aesthetic and no one else's. And boy, that's a lot easier to do than pleasing yourself is way easier than trying to please someone else. I will tell you that. I
love the line in your book, when you're confident, you're fearless, which is really what your book is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fearless writing.
Yeah.
And that to me was cool, because when you get that spark, when you get that flow, you just write.
I think what's helped, it's if you love your work and you write and you think this is great, and then someone else reads it, they go, I think it can be useful in this way, because you are in love, something in it excited you. Your job then is to translate it so that someone else can see what's awesome about it. Now, they may never see what's awesome about it, because you might write romantic suspense, and the person who reads it really isn't interested in suspense, so it's going to be harder for them to understand the value of it. Or you might be into like quiet literary stuff, and the reader wants action, 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 right? But your job is to translate it, and sometimes when you translate it, you don't do a thorough job of translating it. So what's so bright and beautiful in your mind, that's in your mind. And it's not, and you then have to put that into exact words, and you begin to learn as you get better at this. That's writing, where you say, oh, what's on the page doesn't actually match what's so electric in my mind. How can I, and in that way, people reading it saying, I don't get it, it's not funny, or it's not exciting, can be helpful if you don't take it personally, to say, okay, I haven't translated it correctly. But Strider, if you start saying, I'm no good, and the reason they're not liking it is because I'm no, then it can just gum up the works and kill your confidence and make you think that your ideas aren't any good, that your skill isn't any good, that your intelligence isn't any good. And that's never true, but it is unfortunately a pitfall of sharing our work with other people. You have to be very disciplined in how you translate their interpretation of your work, particularly if they're new to the concept, they're new to the business of reading people's work and talking to them about it. I know how to do it, I think, having been at this game a while, in a way that encourages people, regardless of whether I think the piece needs a lot of work or just a little work. But there's a lot of people who don't know how to do that. They'll just say, well, this is boring. Why did you write this? I don't understand.
Or they don't take critiques well. I know when I do a manuscript overview, and I think this is great. Now I'm ready to fire that out there, and it comes back and it's 30 pages of, well, you should probably change this, 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 and that. It is hard on the soul, but being aware that I don't know everything, and other people have points of view, and if I'm trying to get them to read what I have, recognizing that it can be better. then I
Sure.
go back through and I take those words of wisdom, refined, rebuild, repolish, do it again, put it out, and make a better book out of what I had going.
Yeah, I would say though that beware people who have suggestions for how to fix your work. I would say this, that most they don't know. The only thing they know is what they like and don't like, but they don't know what the book should be. So they say, I think you should take this character out. Well, maybe, but they know something isn't working. I have some, we don't have the time for it, but I have stories where from professional editors who have said, you should do this, and it was the wrong thing, but then it was changed and they liked the changes. So I would say be careful of specific suggestions, but pay attention if you can to people not responding, because that's honest. They can say, I felt lost, or I didn't understand the motivation, or that's legitimate. You should have the character be a waitress instead of a surgeon. That's their story, and they may or may not be right. So I would say beware that.
All right, that sounds great. Well, unfortunately, we are kind of running out of time because we have a time frame to set into. For today, I think we're just kind of short. If you'd like to come back someday, I'd love to have you.
I could talk about this stuff forever. So don't you worry. If you want me back, I'll come back.
All right. That sounds great. Thank you so much, Bill. And hope your work just keeps growing and doing better and better and better, which it already is. It's out there. And even I've read it, for goodness sakes. Come on, guys. So for today, I'm Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights. We're sponsored by Durham Publishing. Check them out at durhampublishing.com. And thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Well done. Okay.
Sponsored by durhampublishing.com.